After thoroughly trashing me, Neandra left soon after. Accompanied by Verita, I was on my way returning to the library when Herlindire intercepted us before we got onto the lift. "I heard Malin had prepared questionnaires for you," the throne agent said to me, and then she turned to Verita. "I am taking over and joining the session, just in case." Verita nodded, and so I returned to the library with Herlindire. We found Wellmanor and Malin having a discussion in a corner. Both girls stood up the moment they saw me, and I was soon dragged over to answer their questionnaires. I provided little information about myself other than arriving via a Mechonicus ship on a divine mission, forsaking all other details using the excuse of memory loss, and just went with the flow under the supervision of Herlindire. Unable to gain much on my personal nor important information, to my annoyance Malin started asking about the details of my song. "What is the title of the song? Is it true that its lyrics are in ancient Terran languages?" Malin asked with an unhealthy level of enthusiasm without noticing Wellmanor giving her a quick side eye. The scholar's surface thought was clear to me. Of course it is. I worked on the translation for days, then verified it with multiple other experts. Wow, Wellmanor could understand English and Japanese. I had totally forgotten that Sisters of the Order Dialogus were usually linguistic experts. "Do you remember your singing on Miracle Day?" "Hold on, I have it here," Malin said and reached for her data slate. "No need." I stopped her. No way was I going to let her repeat that painful memory. I had seen the recordings and knew the song, but Miracle Day? That's the unofficial name people had started using for the day when Nusquam narrowly escaped damnation, Wellmanor chipped in. "Then can you please confirm its title? People have been guessing for a while now," Malin said excitedly and handed me her data slate. On it was a news article discussing my solo performance and a number of speculated titles to go along with it. I looked through the article and the proposed title list, caught a glimpse at the accredited translators' names and saw Wellmanor Mia was listed as one of the primary contributors. I then read into the details, gasping internally at how close they came to guessing, and before finding Beautiful World amongst the top contenders for proposed title, they had nailed it. I pointed with a finger at it. Yes, it is in ancient Terran languages. Whoever did the translation and guessing of its title did a great job. This is the correct title. I knew it. Malin exclaimed while Wellmanor's face lit up upon receiving my indirect praise for her hard work. Looking at the happy preacher and scholar, I thought for a moment before deciding to properly honor the song's creator. It is not my song though. I have no idea why I remember this, but I knew for a fact the original artist is from Holy Terror a real long time ago. Malin's eyes widened upon hearing my explanation. "How long?" she asked. "Should I give a proper date?" "Nah." I thought for a moment before giving her a vague but truthful response. When Holy Terror was still known as Earth and the Seven Oceans was still around, I answered and watched as her expression went from ecstatic to blank, unsure of what to make of my comment. Ignoring a speechless Malin, I activated the notepad function of her data slate and wrote down the name, Hikaru Utada, before passing the device back to her. "Please properly attribute credit to the real artist." It was the least I could do for cross-dimensional piracy. It was near the evening when they booted Malin out of the monastery with the excuse of visitors' hours being over and they could not provide accommodation on such short notice. In truth, I knew the sororitas were just messing with the new preacher. I was having another round of checkup done by Verita, supervised by Margus Balpragius and oddly just another senior-looking Sister Hospitaller who I had seen a few times. Usually there were more of them around. I remembered seeing a few of them during my previous sessions. "Just you two today?" I asked Verita, trying to jumpstart a conversation in the silence. "From now on, probably so," Verita replied. "All the others except Sister Julia here voluntarily submitted themselves to partial memory wipe." "Mind wipe? Volunteer?" I stood up, a mixture of shock and outrage washing over me as I instantly understood what had happened. As my caretakers during my rehabilitation, most of the personnel involved would have known what I really am. But without a high enough security clearance, They were forbidden to keep their memories of that information. So that was why the Psykers were here too, in the grim darkness of the far future. Serving the Imperium meant not even your memories belonged to you. Viewing this as a private citizen from a mostly democratic country of the 21st century, such infringement was sacrilege to the basic human rights of the highest order. Who do you think you are? Thabros' words echoed in my mind as I stood still, contemplating the impact on the lives of people around me with my existence alone. What I didn't anticipate was the effect of my response. In front of me both Sister Hospitallers had knelt down while the Magus had become completely motionless like a statue. From the reflection of his lens I saw myself, icy face and eyes gleaming with power. I was angry. It showed, and people got scared. I could see while Verita, who knew me better, was still relatively calm, the senior Hospitaller was trembling slightly. Throne please, I am no Angron. I let out a soft sigh and sat back down. My apologies, I am not angry at any of you. It is just. I find it difficult that people are losing their memories because of me. Margus Balpragius took a deep bow before he spoke. As expected of the one who was created by the Omnissiah and is closer to the divine source, your vexation is comprehensible. Denying the sisters of their recollections of your true identity is equivalent to theft of their knowledge, robbing them of a portion of divinity's manifestation, thus rendering the memory wipe an act of sacrilege. Nonetheless, I assert that the compromise for improved information security is advantageous and well worth it. Did this guy just do a runabout version of Sasuga bootlicking? Nonetheless, the Magus did provide me with a nice exit ramp, so I nodded in acknowledgement. I am sorry for my emotional display, but it was upsetting. Personally, I view all personal memories as sacred. No one had any further comment, so I then turned to the senior Hospitaller, Sister Julia. We have met but never been introduced. Yes. The senior Hospitaller quickly lowered her head as she introduced herself. I am Hospitaller Superior Julia Parmith, ranking sister for the Order Hospitaller on Nusquam. I am beyond blessed to be making your acquaintance, holy daughter. I will be in your care. I nodded and tried to be approachable but felt only religious veneration on Julia's surface thoughts. I realized it would be very difficult if not impossible for me to establish an interpersonal relationship with her at this point. We concluded the checkup and Balpragius gave me the report. While I am far from able to divine the grand design created by the Omnissiah, but even with my limited knowledge it is my belief that you are as healthy as can be. Daily checkups would not be necessary from this point. Finally it was official, I was fit for duty. Later that day, I received news that Canonus Diadina had delayed her scheduled return, chasing after more heretic nests. It was around dinner time when I noticed some news about the heretic hunts. Due to newly uncovered leads, hundreds of people had been arrested and many more executed. I wondered if that had anything to do with what happened today, as my eventful second day of living in the monastery was coming to an end. Dinner was a dull solo I don't feel like eating the nice food in front of me affair. I had solace, my servo skull, scan the food for poison and toxin beforehand, a procedure Verita had insisted that I should make into a habit. Speaking of dinner, I just realized having eggs around meant that chicken, our poultry friends back from Earth, had made it to the stars with us. I wondered if they were still considered the most abused domesticated species around at this time. Soon after dinner Herlin Dyer visited to get a detailed report of the psychic interrogation on the Space Marine. She was also staying at the monastery for the time being. I was halfway narrating my story when it occurred to me. Can I fully trust the Inquisition? As much as my natural inclination to just leave everything to people like Thabros and Herlin Dyer, something was bugging me. The way the Inquisitor had asked me not to dig too much into their business was a dead giveaway that I was not fully trusted by them either. Then that vision of an Inquisition rosette held by dragon claws burning in a fire flashed before my mind, and I decided on my course of action. I need to look into this myself. I skipped the most crucial parts, finished the report and was left alone after that. Finally free, I was going to sort out my gift for Wellmanor when a scene outside the window caught my attention. My room had some large curtained windows directly overlooking the gated entry of the monastery compound, where a crowd much bigger than the one I saw had gathered. Religious fanatics. I shivered and closed the curtains. I then took the time to pick an outfit as the promised gift. Totally clueless on fashion, I selected a ceremonial gown which looked formal enough for most occasions. I remembered Wellmana did pause for a second longer when she came across this particular piece the last time. Fingers crossed that she really did like it. Talking about fashion, I was wondering where to get a sample of the mundane life on this planet when the television unit in the room caught my sight. Why didn't I think of that? After some fumbling with the remote control, I managed to operate the ultra-high-resolution TV and spent some time watching their programs. The first program I came across was a documentary called The Glory of Humanity, celebrating the achievements and accomplishments of humanity. It showcased the technology, culture, and warfare that have made the Imperium of Man the current greatest power in the galaxy. In pure propaganda fashion, it could not stop singing praises to the Emperor the whole time. Flipping through the channels, I next came across another show called Loyalty Unto Death. It highlighted short stories of incredible feats of known ordinary soldiers and citizens during trying times to showcase their unbreakable loyalty and dedication. Only a few featured figures survived their ordeal to personally tell their tales. Feeling uneasy about watching a show about martyrs, I changed the channel again and landed on an interesting show called Imperial Justice. It followed a local law officer on his adventures of dealing with crimes on Nusquam while working with the Arbits, literally a space-age, grimdark cop show. That said, these programs were not subtle in their pushing for the themes about loyalty, self-sacrifice and dedication to the Imperium. My initial impression was that for the average citizen, their way of life was very rigid. There was an emphasis on class status and how people need to know their places. Suddenly my servo skull, Solace, signaled an incoming call with Wellmana shown as the caller. I picked it up with a flick of my mind. "Hello, Wellmana." "My lady, sorry to disturb you at this time. I just received confirmation on the list of ecclesiarchy visitors tomorrow and, Even through the voice chat, her tenseness and hesitation was apparent, so I decided that I might as well ask her to come over. "Something to discuss? Just come to my place." Wellmana arrived soon after. I recognized her footsteps and unlocked the door remotely as she reached the entrance, then Solace welcomed her into my living quarters. It was far easier to read the mind of others when the other party was willing and wanted to share. Even before Wellmana was seated, I was already receiving information by casually skimming her surface thoughts. Tomorrow, important ecclesiarchy big shots are visiting. Archdeacon, deacons, prominent priests and preachers. Seemed like the whole elite high-hat gang would be coming. "We have some very important guests from the church coming tomorrow, yes?" I asked preemptively, not wanting to waste time nor make her job difficult. "Oh, yes." Wellmana answered happily, truly glad that I opened the topic for her. His Grace Archdeacon Ricine will head a prominent delegation for a visit tomorrow. Then I sensed multiple worries that hung heavily on her mind: presentation and arrangements. I played along. "Thank you for handling all the red tape and formalities. Should I wear something more formal for the occasion? Would you like to pick an outfit for me again?" "That would be great." Wellmana bowed and smiled from the bottom of her heart as almost all her hurdles were immediately solved. We dug into my luggage again and went through the collection quickly, eventually settling on an outfit. I tried it on and the scholar sister nodded approvingly, satisfied that I looked formal enough for the important guests tomorrow. "Speaking of outfit, I believe I still owe you a gift," I said while taking out the folded ceremonial gown. Wellmana went pale upon seeing her gift, and she raised a hand to cover her mouth. "I am sorry, it is overdue, please accept it." I pushed it to her. Wellmana grabbed hold onto the garment respectfully with both hands. Her dizzied mind eventually blossomed into a spring of gratitude and she finally said, "I will treasure this greatly." She even lowered her head slightly to hide her teary eyes. Anyway, I should use this opportunity to ask questions about some issues that were bugging me. Wellmanor, I was informed that some of the sister hospitallers who oversaw my recovery had their memories wiped. Who exactly in the sororitas currently knows of my true identity? About that. As far as I know, beside me and all the Palatines, only the Canoness and her retinue, plus Sister Hospitaller Julia, knows the whole truth. Not even Zofia? Well, technically she won't be in the list. But I am not sure if Canoness Diadina had kept up with the code of secrecy with key figures like Sister Zofia. Why? The true prophecy foretold the danger about proclaiming your identity to the world, and we had kept the number of people in the loop as low as possible. However, it is not beyond the canonness to disclose such information to trusted individuals to boost morale. At times I could tell she couldn't wait to inform the whole world that the Emperor had sent his hidden daughter here for something truly massive. I winced internally, silently praying whatever was in that vault would be worthy of such high expectations. Tell me about the Cardinal. I switched topics, hoping to know more about this infamous individual from a local. Wellmanor's expression became visibly grimmer with the mention of the Cardinal. She gave off the impression of talking about a black sheep in the family. Well, His Holiness Pordenith IV might be too ambitious for his own good as the Cardinal of Nusquam. Why is that? You see. It was a fascinating story. In essence, a nearby shrine world, Sanctatus Primus, was the primary religious hub of the subsector. A long time ago, after a particularly savage power struggle for the cardinal throne on Sanctatus Primus, the losing faction who were on friendly ties with the nobles of Nusquam fled to the planet with the victors high on their tails. Caught in the middle, the Nusquamese leadership then made a deal with the church. It was agreed that Nusquam would remain a secular world permanently, forever keeping the church out of its central political power structure to prevent the rise of a competing shrine world. And thus the exiles were allowed to live the rest of their lives in peace, and a unique political structure was born. Pordenith IV is a man who has great interest in power but is stuck in the impossible local political landscape to expand his influence. Wellmanor explained, so at times he vented his frustration in an unruly fashion. I see. We went quiet after that. In the ensuing silence I felt something slowly building up in Wellmanor's mind. A while later she finally built enough resolve to ask her question. Please, can you tell me about the God Emperor? Surprised, I took a closer look at Wellmanor. The dialogus sister exchanged stares with me without flinching, but her pupils had dilated from the sheer mental pressure she must have experienced just to bring out the question. She really did want to know. As for me, for the briefest of moments, I felt like a person who just discovered my new best friend was way more interested in my celebrity dad than myself. Not very cool, but totally understandable. What do you want to know? I finally asked after a while. Anything and everything. I am sorry, my only memory of him is beyond words. I started saying and sensed Wellmanor's mood dipped sharply upon hearing my words, but she did a good job on keeping a neutral face. What was I supposed to tell her? That for a psyker the Emperor looked like a sentient son and his current mind was too shattered to hold a simple conversation? I only had second-hand memory about seeing the actual Big E, and it was quite a traumatic experience. It would be so much easier to show than to tell. Hold on, this could be done just like that psychic interrogation, right? I can do that. I became excited by the idea. It felt like discovering a new world. In theory, I just needed to create a virtual vision and guide her synapses into my simulation. It should be a much easier process since she was a totally willing subject in comparison to the Space Marine. The very notion of being able to give visions to others was utterly intriguing to me, so I decided to give it a chance. There might be a way. Would you like to try? To do what exactly? For you to see him yourself. Wellmanor's face tightened up just by my mere suggestion, but she nodded eagerly and consented. I do not understand, but if it can deepen my connection with the God Emperor, I am willing. Well, in that case I need to prepare the scene first. All right, give me a moment. Psychana activa, activated. Cogitatio acceleratio, activated. Simulatio, activated. Gathering my powers, I closed my eyes and began the massive internal calculations on recreating the mind-blowing psychic impression of the Emperor inside my mind. The work was not easy. To do this I had to push into the deep recesses of my memory which were heavily entangled with emotions. From there I painstakingly reconstructed my impression of the Emperor in that fateful reunion. Running thought acceleration on overdrive, I tweaked and adjusted, then modified and improved the scene thousands of times inside my head. It was a doubly difficult process as most of the involved elements were not even physical in nature. Nevertheless, I persevered with brute computation strength and pushed forward many adjustments until finally, a satisfactory level of closeness of what I remembered was achieved in vivid three-dimensional information. Then it occurred to me I did not catch a glimpse of the actual golden throne in SYRINE's memory. That darn throne was so prevalent in all the lore, an Emperor sighting experience would be incomplete without it. Luckily I had seen the throne on the cover of an official novel and went to work with the sanctioned source. As usual there were many blanks to fill, but these were much easier work when compared to the reconstruction of the Emperor in his full psychic glory. Soon with the throne settled, I just needed to put the virtual Emperor onto the throne in a seated position and everything was good to go. It is ready. I opened my eyes, happy with the preparation, but nevertheless felt the need to lower Wellmanner's expectation with some disclaimers beforehand. I smiled and extended a hand to her. No promises, but I will do my best. Hold on to my hand. What am I doing? Asking the Emperor's daughter to provide glimpses of the master of mankind? Is this not an act of sacrilege and an abuse of position of the highest order? Wellmanner had been asking herself such questions a lot in the past minutes. Her pulse quickened just by reviewing her own actions. Surely this was bordering on blasphemy. But this might be the only chance she will ever have, plus Lady SYRINE has been so kind and accommodating. Wellmanner had an idea of what was coming in the near future. This rare event of being alone with the Emperor's daughter probably might never happen again. So when she finally built up her courage and made her request, Wellmanner watched in mortification as SYRINE abruptly went silent. Just as the sister believed a grave mistake had been made, to her surprise SYRINE had turned around and agreed to her selfish petition. More shockingly, SYRINE even spoke of a way to let her see the master of mankind. Not knowing what to expect but obviously unwilling to miss out on this, Wellmanner eagerly agreed to whatever SYRINE had in store. SYRINE then spoke of having to prepare for the experience and closed her eyes while the sister waited with bated breath. A while later, when the holy daughter opened her eyes again, her once depthless silver pupils glowed gold with divine light. Wellmanner had seen this phenomena a few times now, however this was the first time she was witnessing it up close. In the next instant SYRINE extended a hand to her and Wellmanner took it without hesitation. There was an explosion of light, and suddenly, Wellmanner found herself in a strange place. It was foggy all around, like a scene in a dream, but her senses were vivid. As she battled with the incongruity, a childlike voice called out to her. Wellmanner? Startled, the sister looked up and saw a small figure appearing from the dense fog. To her relief, it was SYRINE, except strangely, she was a child here. Both her appearance and attire were the same, just that she had shrunk and looked to be no more than 5 years of age in this impossible place. Can you hear me? The little SYRINE asked as she approached. Her tone and mannerism was as Wellmanner remembered, full of warmth and friendliness. Relieved, she bowed and answered. Yes, my lady. Where is this and why are you? A child? The little SYRINE smiled and looked kind of embarrassed about her situation, patting her own head while dropping a statement. Sorry, I am new to this vision thing and might have overlooked certain issues. Vision. So this is one of the many divine visions Wellmanner had read about. To think she was experiencing it herself and the idea that she was about to receive divine revelation shocked the sister. Hold on, I just wanted to know more about the Emperor. Anyway, let's proceed. Oblivious to her inner struggles, SYRINE pushed forward before she could protest. Suddenly an explosion of light burst into existence as Wellmanner felt like a sun had materialized behind her. Accompanying the intense illumination was the rising heat on her back and an overwhelming presence indescribable with words. Is that? Wellmanor had a hunch of who had appeared behind her and started to shake uncontrollably. Wanting to confirm with her own eyes, she was about to turn around but found her legs unable to move. Confused, she tried again but found her shaking body refusing any directive. Feeling helpless, she turned to SYRINE, only to see the latter glowing like an adorable little angel under the intense light, though she was no longer smiling. Slowly the little SYRINE started walking forward, her sight locked into the far distance behind Wellmanor. With every step SYRINE took, the suffocating pressure from the unknown presence intensified. Up and up the pressure climbed until eventually it became difficult for Wellmanor to even breath. She was about to cry out for help when SYRINE spoke again. Wellmanor, turn around. That broke the petrifying spell and Wellmanor found herself able to move again, but only barely. Trembling, the sister started to turn, feeling the intense heat climbing onto her face as she did so. With a final colossal effort, Wellmanor spun around to face what was behind her. The scene awaiting the sister was beyond her imagination and Wellmanor struggled to make sense of what she was seeing. At an indeterminable distance away was a pyramid shimmering in golden light. It was huge, clearly occupying a space far away, yet it stretched and swelled to fully occupy her vision. On top of the pyramid was a colossal throne covered with impressions of golden filigree that weaved through intricate circuitries, pulsating with a subtle energy hinting at the immense psychic forces that swirled within. Countless banners with powerful symbols and glyphs hung from the heavens atop of the throne. While the overall scene was out of this world, it all paled in comparison to the illuminating figure that was seated in the middle of it all. Wellmanor's mind went into overdrive. She simultaneously could not get enough of looking at everything, yet at the same time she found herself lacking the courage to look directly at the shining entity who she believed to be the master of mankind. But this was what she had asked for, and Wellmanor resolved to not let this miracle go to waste. Under suffocating pressure, she steeled herself and forced her eyes to focus upon the figure that dominated the entire space, the source of all the intense lights in this strange place. And finally, she saw him. Seated atop the golden throne was an awe-inspiring glowing figure that transcended her mortal comprehension. Fully clad in an ornate golden armor that was embellished with intricate patterns, was a vision of divine majesty that radiated an impossibly regal aura. Obscured by the radiance of a titanic halo that was many times larger than the ones SYRINE ever manifested, the figure's facial features were impossible to define, yet paradoxically a distinct mixture of sternness and compassion could be felt with the weight of 1,000,000 lifetimes. Surrounding the figure was an ethereal storm of divine energy that danced in spellbinding patterns. The very air itself crackled with raw power, casting an otherworldly glow on the entire space. As the sister's eyes darted all over the unfathomable sight, she traced where the outgoing lights were heading and noticed for the first time the vast darkness surrounding him. The entire scene felt like a glimpse into the unimaginable scale of the Emperor's existence, a testament to his sacrifice for humanity, a monument to his psychic might that protected all his people from the malevolent forces, and a symbol of defiance against the encroaching darkness that threatened to consume all. Witnessing the whole divine spectacle, Wellmanor could not nor dare not move, her heart hammered like silent thunder, even the act of breathing felt like a sacrilege. Then the little SYRINE who Wellmanor had all but forgotten until now uttered a single word. Father. Wellmanor felt every fine hair on her stood on their end as her god in the distance seemed to turn to the calling, and she herself was in the spot where his attention would land. A feeling of an all-knowing, all-powerful force settled on her, and the pressure Wellmanor had been feeling until now intensified many times over. Utterly petrified and having nowhere to hide, she stared back, and felt herself immolating from the sheer intensity. His divinity. It burns. Wellmanor wanted to scream, just as she opened her mouth. A sensation that could not be anything else but being struck by lightning hit her and... Wellmanor. Please wake up. The fainted sister's head was resting on my lap while I gently slapped her face. She had a rapid pulse and last I checked, enlarged pupils. I screwed up. Except for the unforeseen situation of me turning into a child in the vision due to the impression from SYRINE's memory, my little experiment was going smoothly and everything was working as intended when disaster struck. The simulated vision was so realistic, without realizing it I uttered "Father" like how the Horus Heresy audiobooks always played with the word, only for me to witness Wellmanor dropping like a sack of potatoes moments later in the vision. Our little sightseeing psychic tour had flopped hard as Wellmanor suddenly fainted from shock. After I hurriedly ended the simulation, I found a fainted Wellmanor back in real life. It was my fault, I should have anticipated this. While for me it was like a fun virtual tour, for the sister it must have felt like the ultimate communion with her God. I even did some on-the-fly adjustments to let her experience the sheer presence Big E exuded, and it proved too much. Just as I was about to bite the bitter pill and summon medical assistance, to my relief Wellmanor finally opened her eyes. Wellmanor.
I am really sorry.
Are you feeling all right? I asked, sensing the jitters on her mind which could mean that I might have caused some unknown damage. Wellmanor turned her eyes on me as she struggled to speak. At first it was all gibberish but eventually her words came through. I saw him, she said, sniffling as tears started streaming down from her eyes, but smiling as she repeated her statement softly. I saw him. That was enough adventure for today. It was late into the night when Wellmanor finally calmed down, promised to keep our little psychic adventure between us, and left. Thankfully she appeared to have suffered little lasting damage done from her communion. So much had happened just today alone. Despite being far from tired, after taking a bath I laid down on my bed and tried to have a semblance of normality by aiming to rest for 6 hours. Instead I quickly got bored and inevitably thought of today's events. Oh, right. I killed someone with my bare hands. Strangely, I did not feel much regret, but that was probably due to my victim being lost to chaos. Looking back, those flashes of lethal inspirations I witnessed when that Arbitz trooper charged me 2 days ago were no fluke. I could have easily killed the officer with the same contemptuous ease of smashing up some tofu pieces. After moving past the unsettling vast difference in the happenings of this life compared to my old self, my focus quickly zoomed onto reviewing the sparring I had with Neandra. No fair. For the first time after coming to this world I was finally having some fun, but it was so short-lived. The way I could move with this body was an unattainable dream in my old self as an unathletic couch potato. In my mind I replayed the melee sequence again and again, reliving those intense moments with my vivid recall while reviewing all my actions and mistakes. I realized that while my body could replicate every martial arts movement with ease, there was no way for me to directly compete with the Imperial Assassin. The gap between our skills, lethal instinct and actual combat experience was simply too vast to be immediately bridged by any amount of raw talent. It was like having a running contest between a super toddler who just barely learned to walk against the reigning Olympic champion. After many sessions of reviewing our fights, I eventually came up with multiple different ways to improve my odds for future matches. As I was simulating melee bouts inside my head late into the night, I sensed an increase of activity outside and got up to have a look. Peeking through one of the windows, I saw a convoy of vehicles entering the monastery compound. Curious, I laid back down on my bed and closed my eyes. A moment later, I successfully sent out my projection to have a closer look. With my consciousness floating above many parked armored vehicles, I witnessed many prisoners being rushed into the lower levels of the monastery, under heavy security provided by groups of battle sisters. For a moment I contemplated on following the stream of prisoners to further investigate before remembering the unpleasant dungeon located in the area. In the end I decided against probing any further for my own mental health. This relentless transition from a normie who once lived an oblivious civilian life to a position of always looking at secret governmental activities proved a bit too much for my sanity. I returned to my body, feeling the incoherent sensation of being in peak physical condition, but mentally exhausted. I pulled the blanket over my head and wished morning would come faster. Eventually, morning did arrive. After washing up I went through the news updates and saw more reports of Imperial forces led by the sororitas doing their thing. Apparently Canonus Diadina and her girls had been kicking asses, busted a major cultist hive. The powers that be on the planet seemed eager to lift the spirits of its people after the near calamity by capitalizing on the success of the heretic hunts, as the raids enjoyed major coverage. Sanctioned reporters were on site providing every bit of detail, and one of them even briefly interviewed Diadina herself. Flanked by her retinue, the Canonus looked lively, praising the god emperor and dedicating her new victories to the recently awakened holy daughter. "Wait, that's me. Hey! Stop shoveling attention here." I lamented internally, suddenly desperately missing my old days of having little to no drag on the world around me. Outside of my room, the world continued to grind on, and through Solace I was constantly being updated on the preparation status of today's events. After Wellmanor called to confirm both the second batch of test candidates and that the guests had arrived at the expected time, I put on the outfit selected by the sister and checked myself in front of the mirror. Time to go to work. I exited my quarters with Solace, then started walking down a long corridor to a common area where a secured elevator was located. All around me were high-rising walls adorned with intricate religious Gothic carvings and delicate arches that reached toward the high ceiling. The floor was paved with polished marble tiles inlaid with exquisite designs that resonated with gentle echo with every step I took. In front of me, the corridor was illuminated by a soft radiance of an ethereal glow. Rays of golden morning sunlight pierced through the richly colored stained glass towering above, casting a kaleidoscope of hues upon the marble floor where shades of vibrant colors competed for attention. Solace the servo skull cruised ahead in the air a few steps in front of me, scattering the minute dust particles that were floating lazily in the light, adding a touch of serenity to the scene. For a moment I had the illusion of being inside a 6-star hotel of sorts, that I was on a long vacation on Earth visiting a holy site of a faraway land. Walking down the corridor, I was captivated by the interplay of light and shadow that casted dramatic silhouettes on the marble floor. Each step I took revealed new details on the towering stained glass windows, each of them depicting important local historical scenes and many imperial saints in vivid, jewel-toned hues. At the end of this short but magnificent journey stood Wellmanor. Illuminated, she glowed with a shimmering sense of spirituality. I could not help but do a double take on the scholarly sister. Something seemed different about her today, something profound but so elusive that even my superhuman senses could not properly pinpoint. Wellmanor bowed deeply. "Good morning, Lady SYRINE." "Morning, how are you?" I asked, still feeling a bit worried about the incident yesterday. She smiled before answering in a completely calm voice. "Never been better." We took the lift down, and as we approached the meeting level, I detected Hi's presence even while being psychically passive. The senior psyker was using her formidable powers, and the psychic resonance reached me even while she was quite a distance away. Psychana Activa, activated. As my senses opened to the beyond, I saw what was happening. Hi was probing the minds of the delegates. As soon as Hi sensed my powers, she greeted me with subtle telepathy, like a light nod to a friend that cut through physical barriers, knowable only between psychers. Mimicking her mannerism, I greeted the elder psyker back and then turned off my active state. Turning around, I noticed Wellmanor eyeing me. "Yes?" I smiled and asked. "I am sorry." She quickly bowed and explained, "It could be nothing, but... Did my lady use your powers just now?" "Huh? How did you know?" "I felt something," the scholar said sheepishly. Hey, this got nothing to do with yesterday's accident, right?" As I wondered about the issue, the elevator door opened to reveal Herlin Dyer, who was waiting for us. "Lady SYRINE, sister, morning." The throne agent bowed, looking professional as always but with a distinctive note of, strangely enough, happiness this time. "Morning, Herlin Dyer. You look extra sunny today," I said, dropping a probing statement. The throne agent smiled before saying, "Thanks to you, a somewhat troublesome situation has been painlessly solved." While her words revealed nothing, I was able to glimpse what was on her mind. Praise from Thaborus, Good job on getting the upper echelons of the ecclesiarchy to voluntarily submit for mind probes. I have laid the ground rules for the church's guests. Herlin Dyer said cheerfully, I told them you are under the direct protection of the Holy Inquisition. It is forbidden to ask questions about your background or anything related to the active psychic beacon. They knew about the psychic beacon. I was about to raise that question before remembering that the Cardinal was currently rushing back from Offworld, probably with the guide of the very beacon, and he had been keeping in contact with his underlings via astropathic messages. Of course the Church knew. Besides, there must be other sanctioned psychers active on the planet. There was no hiding the beacon from the rich and powerful, it was just not public knowledge for the commoners. Holy Daughter, said a familiar, uniquely pitched voice arriving along with the approach of armored footsteps. Looking behind Herlin Dyer, I saw the owner of that voice, Palatine Domine Zeal, walking up to me. Unlike Alysia, Domine's attire as a full-fledged Palatine was more decorated. Her power armor was edged with silver highlights, a sizable iron halo rose from the top of the power pack on her back, while many solid-looking religious trinkets hung together with a sheathed power sword on her waist. The flowing white tabard under her power armor was subtly emblazoned with many repeating symbols of both the sororitas and the ecclesiarchy, adding a hint of ranking to her appearance. Domine did not wear a helmet, her exposed face was a vision of youthful determination decorated with a few blemishes and scars that spoke of her martial lifestyle, but did little to diminish her overall charm. Sporting a modified version of the classic Battle Sister haircut with her dark blonde hair, she exuded a serene confidence despite looking to be in her late 20s. Her pair of bright green eyes shimmered with the lights of intelligence and zeal, hinting at the potent blend of compassion and righteous fury unique to the sororitas. Hello, Domine. I replied, purposely skipping her title like I did with Alysia and silently hoping she would not treat me like a divine doll. Despite being one of few ranking sisters who knew my real identity, I never had the chance to know her better. Greetings, I will be in charge of overseeing your events for today, Domine said as she greeted me with the full compliments of an Aquila hand sign and a deep bow. Huh? Where is Alysia? She is supposed to be here today. Is this prearranged? Why is Alysia not present? I decided to ask, but kept my voice as neutral as possible. Alysia is currently repenting in the Cabin of Solitude as punishment from her dereliction of duty for letting a heretic get close to you. She will be present in the afternoon. Domine answered with a hint of nervousness. What happened yesterday was not, I almost protested out loud before remembering something about how people in power should never display obvious favoritism. Despite how much I like Alysia as a person, my protest might actually hurt her standing in the order. So instead I simply nodded. I see, I will be in your care. Seeing I did not react negatively, Domine smiled, brimming with enthusiasm as she answered. I am honored. Together we walked towards the meeting area where Malin was waiting outside. Her presence pulled my wandering mind back to reality. I was about to meet the ecclesiarchy dignitaries. That notion made me somewhat nervous, and I breathed in deeply, drawing in the cool air that carried with it a faint scent of incense. I must confess, meeting with the elite High Hat gang was not as horrible as I had imagined. With but a few exceptions, the colorful collection of influential clergy members adorned in their various ecclesiastical vestments were mostly elderly men. Malin stuck out like a sore thumb in the crowd of graying elders and late middle-aged individuals, being the only young person in the church's contingent. As the official representative assigned to me, Malin also had the honor of introducing the most respected spiritual leaders on Nusquam, making her stand out even more. Starting from Archdeacon Ricine Venerin, who I had met briefly before, I was introduced to Deacon Octavius Mortimer, Deacon Maximal Voros, Deacon Lucerius Dornan, Deacon Celestia Veradis, High Confessor Malachi Drivian, High Confessor Keys Valerius, High Abbot Marcus Aurelius, Abbot Ignatius Cromwell, Abbot Benedictus Simeon, High Abbess Seraphina Valerius, Reverend Mother Octavia Sinclair, and Lady Amaris Ravencroft. I met their gazes and nodded as each name was announced. Judging by the trepidation and awe etched on their faces, My guess was that I was as unsettled as them while we traded first impressions. These were the elite of the elite the church had to offer. They certainly looked the part. Every individual was a living image of a monolithic priesthood, though some members were clearly better fed than the others with their pristine silky robes and pricey-looking trinkets. I whispered silent, grateful thanks for my photographic memory, for I knew my old mortal self would have forgotten most of their names by the time the introduction was done. Unlike them, my true feelings were masked away by, regardless, while all their expressions were plain to read, and their unguarded thoughts flashed like roadside billboards before my mind. So breathtaking. She is like a living doll. Absolutely stunning. Unbelievable presence. On the other side of the hall were the new batch of candidates in vegetative states, all neatly seated and tied down, ready for the proven procedure from yesterday. With little else to say to everyone present, I conjured my halo to start my work. As the divine radiance filled the hall for the first time today, the ecclesiastical guests' eyes widened in awe and disbelief, their mouths agape as they witnessed the tangible manifestation of their God's power for the first time in their lives. No tricks. No illusion. From the corner of my sight I caught glimpses of their reaction. After overcoming the initial shock, some of the dignitaries bowed their heads, their lips moving soundlessly in silent prayer. Others were overcome by the weight of the moment, their hands trembling as tears streamed down from their weathered faces. The archdeacon, while rendered speechless, was still able to keep a dignified demeanor, but his trembling mind was leaking loud thoughts which I picked up easily, thrown on terror. This light. If we show this to the masses, we would instantly restore the church's reputation and the number of faithful will explode. Ignoring the church's elite, I started working with the now familiar motion by stopping briefly in front of every candidate and blasting them with my powers, scrubbing away any trace of residual warp taint. Repeating the results from yesterday, one by one I released the candidates from their vegetative state. Behind me, hushed whispers rippled through the assembly as the guests, each trying to comprehend the significance of the moment. In front of me, the recurring theme of reactions repeated themselves with many of the candidates looking around nervously after being freed from their condition. A few recognized me and asked to confirm if I was the one singing on the battlefield. The cured were then taken away to be further inspected by the people under the ecclesiarchy stationed next door for final verification. As the process continued, I felt an increasing amount of frantic thoughts from some of the dignitaries behind me. Even without trying, many of their thoughts effortlessly leaked through. One was questioning what he was seeing. What in the name of throne? This is real? A living saint is here. Another mind echoed, full of sudden existential crisis. A living saint? In this inconsequential backwater world? Why? Why? I ignored them and continued on with my work. The process went on until one of the candidates, a trooper just like many others, started panicking and asked questions after regaining consciousness. Did we lose? What will happen to me? His voice was weak and cracking. That depends. Are you still loyal and faithful to the Emperor? I asked and received only blank stares in response. I tried to read his mind but only detected a confused mess. This fella looked suspicious as hell and his silence was deafening. It got awkward and I took note of the closest battle sister tightening the grip on her bolter ever so slightly. I got a feeling a world of hurt was coming towards this confused individual if this was not resolved immediately. Thinking fast, it occurred to me that this might be a good time to test a technique I learned from yesterday. Flexing my powers, I quickly flashed the mental image of a stern-faced emperor in his full psychic glory into the man's mind while demanding a response. Answer me. Echoes of my question rang out in the hall, only to be answered by a commotion behind me. I turned around and saw a plump middle-aged clergyman, who I recognized to be Abbot Benedictus, stumbling on the floor, his high hat on the ground. Did he trip? As everyone's attention fell on the fallen abbot, the chubby man suddenly started wailing in distress as tears started streaming from his eyes. In the next moment he was shouting towards heaven. God Emperor. Lord.
I confess.
I have sinned. What the hell? Abbot, what in the throne's name are you doing? Archdeacon Ricine called out, his usual sagely bearing disappeared, taken over by an outrage triggered by the sudden shameful display of his subordinate. My lord. My light. I beg for your forgiveness and mercy. Ignoring his superior, with everyone watching in disbelief, the weeping abbot continued to blubber out unbelievable words. More alarmingly, he started crawling towards me like a landed seal, his face an unhealthy shade of red and contorted with duress. Stop. Come no closer. Palatine Domine ordered and placed herself between me and the crawling clergyman, her bolt pistol drawn. She then raised a fist, and immediately a few nearby battle sisters formed a small protective circle around me while switching off the safety on their bolters with practiced ease. Seeing the sudden escalation, I activated thought acceleration and blasted out, Auspex, to check around for safety concerns. I quickly determined none of the ecclesiarchy guests, including the one on the floor, were armed, nor carried anything resembling explosives. The sisters got jumpy because of what happened yesterday. It is fine, he is not armed. I whispered to Domine and turned to the abbot on the floor. Dear father, I wasn't addressing you. The sorry-looking clergyman on the floor froze, then behind him came more commotions as two more guests dropped to their knees. The hall went into an uproar, and in the chaos Archdeacon Ricine lost all his composure and started ordering the sisters to remove the 3 clergy members prostrating on the floor. Looking around, I noticed Malin covering her mouth with a hand, pure shock and disbelief on her face, while most of the sisters, including Wellmanor, were silently observing the scene with cold disdain. I turned my attention to the 3 people on the floor and saw what was going on inside their minds. They were afraid. Deathly afraid. You would think, as the top peddlers of institutionalized religion, they would have unshakable faith and would be elated to see any sort of emperor's miracle for themselves. Instead, I distinctly felt they were shaken to their core. Why? If it is not as if they were tainted by chaos. Thinking my halo had somehow caused these people to act out, I turned it off and felt the charged state of the hall immediately went down by a notch. High Confessor Malachi, one of the individuals who knelt down earlier, shakily got back on his feet. Clearly unstable, he pointed a trembling finger at me and shouted with an emotionally charged voice. What was that? Who exactly are you? As the High Confessor of the Ministorum, I demand you to provide irrefutable proof that you are blessed by the God Emperor himself. Most people gasped, a lot more cringed at the High Confessor's clearly deranged action. Even the Archdeacon looked totally stunned by the development. It was at this moment Wellmanor silently walked over to the confessor. I could tell she was furious, an angry cloud of emotion floating over her head. As she stopped in front of the confessor, the elderly clergyman looked at her, confusion on his face. With everyone looking, Wellmanor delivered a swift hefty slap on the confessor's cheek. The resounding fleshy clap resonated loudly in the hall. Oh my God! Everyone went quiet, and Wellmanor spoke in a frighteningly calm voice. How dare you talk to Lady SYRINE with such insolence? Her actions saved countless new squammies, and she has saved our world from damnation by facing down a greater demon. Even now she is saving more of our people. Where were you during those trying times? Recovering from the shock of being slapped in front of the whole crowd, Malachi angrily pointed an accusatory finger at Wellmanor and continued his tirade. You dare to hit me? Assault. She committed assault. Sisters, abide your duties as members of our chamber militant. Arrest this woman for striking a senior member of the church. He looked frantically at the surrounding battle sisters, urging them to take action, but nobody moved. That's enough. An elegant voice called out with an authoritative tone, ceasing the frantic standoff. Pulling all the attention in the hall, Herlindia appeared with a wolfish grin on her pretty face, Psyche High by her side and a squad of inquisitorial stormtroopers behind her back. Tactical boots clicking sharply on the marble floor, the throne agent walked slowly towards the center of the hall as she made an announcement. Throne on terror as our witness, everyone here including our saint candidate, sisters of sororitas and esteemed members of the church all witnessed what just happened. Herlindia then paused, letting black-cladded stormtroopers fan out behind her as she raised a small inquisitorial rosette. As the ranking agent of the Holy Inquisition present, I find the behavior of these individuals to be highly suspicious. With the authority conferred to me by Inquisitor Thaberus Thorn of the Ordo Hereticus, I hereby order an immediate arrest on these 3 individuals for further investigation. She then turned to the Archdeacon. Your Grace, do you object to this? Archdeacon Ricine had no reply. He was busy face-balming himself with a hand and was looking down at the floor. The other clergy members exchanged glances with grim faces, a shared understanding passing between them on the pending fallout that would follow. What a mess, all this because I misfired my powers? I thought as my attention turned back to the initial target of my test, the young man who was still tied to the chair. He looked to be in some sort of shock and had tears forming around his eyes. He was whimpering so softly that probably only I could hear his words. I am loyal. I am loyal. I am loyal. I got a feeling this was going to be a long day.